God protect me. I'm a young black man doing all that I can to stand. Oh, but when I look around and I see what's being done to my kind, every day I'm being hung to this parade. My people don't want no trouble. We've had enough struggle. I just wanna live. God protect me. I just wanna live. God protect me. So many thoughts in my head. Will I live or will I end up dead? It's an need for sequel. No matter where I be, there's no place safe for me. Oh, I'm not asking for too much. So Lord, please help. I just wanna live. God protect me. I just wanna live. God protect me. This is my battle cry. I just wanna live. God protect me. I just wanna live. God protect me. I just wanna live.
You're listening to Black Women's Leadership on WURD Radio, 96.1 FM, 900 AM, streaming live on Facebook on WURD.com. Good afternoon, Rita.
Good afternoon, Joanne. How you doing today?
Well, I'm having some technology failures, at the moment. And then, what's interesting is that no matter how many times I tell people that we're on, for, like from 1 to 4,
Yes.
every time I'm on, they call me anyway,
Call you anyway. They text and call me too.
They just call you anyway. It reminds me sometimes I'm watching my favorite channel, which is MSNBC.
Right?
You hear people whose phones ringing and stuff, and it's like, okay, kind of like, don't you know they're on air? And
They know. People know.
and they'll continue to try to call. It's been a week, and so I listened to as much of the press conference as I could, and
Yes.
I wanted to get your impression, and then we'll talk about what the rest of our show is going to be like today.
Okay, because I'm still a little frustrated with it. They pulled out all the slides again. They pulled out the statistics. They talked about this new initiative where they'll be giving money for tips with the marshals, the federal marshal's office. And they said they were going to track their progress and they were going to let us know, what was going on, what was the progress, what was happening with this whole initiative, with all this interoperability of all of the different departments coming together to try and combat the gun violence. But I still just haven't heard, you know, a down to earth explanation of what is they're really going to do. They pulled out the statistics again, Joanne, and I'm not a statistics person in this situation. I know statistics matter because they're facts. Facts matter, and we need to look at the facts. But I need a layperson's explanation from that group of people that come on every other week to talk to the citizens of this city. The citizens who are under siege in this city want a layman's term explanation of what they are going to do about it. And we're not getting it. It's hard to decipher. It's hard to weed through everything they're saying to get to the issue. And so I'm frustrated again, just like we were the first time.
Yeah, I think what we have here is a lot of battling between the factions. It is my understanding that City Council is working on something, and it seems like everybody is interested in doing their thing, but they're interested in doing their thing, not collectively.
Exactly.
They're interested in doing their thing individually. And I was trying to follow some of the things that was being said,
Right.
you know, in the comment section.
Mm-hmm.
And someone in the comment section of this Zoom press conference indicated, well, why isn't the DA there? And I would say, you know, it seems to me that if we are taking this whole issue about violence seriously,
Yeah.
then we would put aside our egos. We would put aside all of those things, because
Yes.
if you're elected and you're elected to serve the community, the citizens, and so it is not about the rampant competition between two people or three or the factions. It's about how are we going to resolve the problem.
Exactly.
We have to do this. I've been looking at some of the other major metropolitan areas and how they're tackling it, I'm not going to try to say that they're free from their own what would I say, push and pull between the elected officials.
Okay.
At Maryland, I think it's Mosley, in
Mm-hmm.
Baltimore.
Yep.
She's the state's attorney for Baltimore.
Yes.
And during the whole COVID thing, she recommended that they did not bother to prosecute petty crimes, stopping the police from picking people up for small amounts of drugs, for the prostitution and some of the things, low-level crimes, and to
Right.
concentrate on the more serious and violent crime. They discovered that all of their stats came down as a result of it. Their violent crime stats came down.
Really?
They had a significant reduction in their gun violence, and because of this approach. So it seems to me that people are beginning to take what I believe is a more thoughtful and more intelligent approach to it. I'd like to see that in Philadelphia. It is really important. There's a new mayor in
Really important.
and the new mayor in St. Louis has come out, and she's talking about the reforms that she wants in policing. There's a new African-American woman, and the first African-American woman in St. Louis, and then there's the first African-American woman in in Boston. Can't figure these women's names at the moment, but we'll come back with them. The first thing out when she announced that she was actually going to run for the position, because she said she was the president of city council, and as a result, I think it was Marty Walsh, who was the mayor, stepped down to become labor secretary. She became the mayor of Boston, and now she's running for a term in her own right. And she sees that what she needs to do is really deal with the issue of violence. So there are cities all over this country that understand that we have to do something. And even before we get into the absolute mess in Minnesota, we really need a comprehensive approach to
Yes.
dealing with this.
Because I agree with you. It seems like each department or each agency is focused on their own thing. I don't see how it all fits together. They haven't done an adequate job of describing how it all fits together as one comprehensive plan. It's, this agency's doing this agency is doing that, and that's what they're focusing on. And so it's hard to see this plan as being a comprehensive one that works together. Like you said, we all have to come together if we're going to combat the gun violence. It's an epidemic. We need to come together and have a plan that involves all of us.
So, in keeping with what we've been attempting to do here with the Black Women's Leadership Council radio show, we have tried to focus on the gun violence. And
Yes.
and we're trying to focus on what we can do and trying to use our platform to get people to talk to each other. And in that vein, today we're going to have again the district attorney on, and I have something specific I want to talk to him about in relationship to the staffing of his office.
Okay.
And then I want to talk to him a little bit about about the gun violence, because what I keep hearing people say, it's like pointing fingers in all directions. People blame the police commissioner, and then there's fingers pointing in every direction. And what we're trying to do is stop the finger pointing, get a collaborative effort to go forward, because in the meantime, while all of these fingers are pointing in all of these different directions, people are dying, kids are dying.
Kids are dying.
Things are happening. We're also going to have on back again. He hasn't been here in a while. Attorney General Josh Shapiro.
Okay.
And it is important because in the national headlines, we understand that there is a move by these Republican legislators around the country to roll back voting rights.
That's right.
To roll us past, right on back to the Jim Crow era.
That's right.
And so we want to, and we know that, and they said it's almost in 47 states, there are proposed legislation to take away some of, instead of increasing the right to vote, making it easier.
Yes.
And win fair and square. What you do is that you change the rules of the game. So we want to talk about what's happening in Pennsylvania.
Definitely, we want to talk about it.
We also want to bring to light the issue with respect to the gerrymandering of the Supreme Court, that it's so a little bit with the Attorney General. The way I understand it is that because the governor of this state is a Democrat, any kind of legislation that would roll back or change the composition of the Supreme Court would have to be signed off by the governor. The governor is surely going to veto it. And if the governor vetoes it, they don't have enough votes to override his veto. So they figured out a way to get this around that process by taking it directly to the people, meaning that it's going to be a ballot initiative.
Right.
So we want to talk a little bit about that, because that is something that you need to stop. It is apparent after Trump lost and he then made up the big lie that caused the insurrection in January 6th in D.C., that these mean-spirited laws are up. These mean-spirited laws are they're trying to push it on the book. And the first state out was Georgia. And we want to talk a little bit about Georgia.
Yeah, because after Trump, for sure, the meanness and the racism became more of a norm. The white racist supremacists were no longer afraid to show their racism. And so whatever they can do to hold on to their majority, they're willing to do, and they are willing to come right out front and say it.
So we're going to take a break. You're listening to Black Women's Leadership Council on WURD Radio, 96.1 FM, 900 AM, streaming live on WURDradio.com, and we'll be right back.
I'm Henry Louis Gates Jr. We are people of resilience. No matter what happens, we fight through the pain. We protect our traditions. We uphold our excellence. So let's protect our lives. With vaccines, we can trust. We can do this.
To learn more about COVID-19 vaccines, visit cdc.gov/coronavirus. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
Okay, Her's new fire potato chips and cheese curls. They are spicy. Whew, they're hottest snacks yet. Hold on. Whew. But you know, it's not just heat. There's some nice sweet and savory stuff going on too. Ooh, there's that heat again. It burns, but it burns so tasty. Ooh, that's hot. Find Her's Fire Snacks at your store today. Whew, taste the flavor, feel the heat, break out the Her's.
Join WURD Radio for our 6th annual Jackie Robinson Day live broadcast. Thursday, April 15th from 1 p.m. till 4 p.m. Hosted by Charles Ellison and Andrea Lawful Sanders. In celebration of Jackie Robinson, who revolutionized Major League Baseball by breaking racial barriers, this year we're taking a look at how Robinson and other black athletes have played a pivotal role in advocating for social justice. You don't want to miss it. Thursday, April 15th from 1 p.m. till 4 p.m. exclusively on WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. Streaming live on WURDradio.com, the WURD Radio app, or watch live on WURD TV via Facebook and YouTube. WURD Radio's special Jackie Robinson Day celebration is brought to you by Pico, Brown's Family ShopRite, and the Family Business Partners, Her's Snack Food, Amoroso's, and Deaton Watson.
Hey WURD family, have you heard of the new Go to Know campaign? If not, here is the deal. WURD Radio has partnered with the Colorectal Cancer Alliance, Penn Medicine, LabCorp, and the Independence Blue Cross Foundation to present the Go to Know Fit Kit Screening Campaign. The Go to Know campaign is an at-home screening test for colon cancer. Yup, you heard me right. You can take your own stool sample and mail it back for testing. Did you know colon cancer, if caught early, is 100% preventable? African Americans are 20% more likely to get colon cancer and about 40% more likely to die from it than most other groups. Plus, it is recommended you get screened if you are 45 years of age or older. So for the next 6 months, you can go to WURDradio.com and click on the Go to Know banner for your free at-home screening test. It's that simple. Again, just go to WURDradio.com, click on the Go to Know banner, and request your free at-home screening test. That's it. Go to Know today.
This is WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD Philadelphia. Independent Black Media.
You're listening to The Source with Black Women's Leadership Council on WURD Radio.
Streaming live on WURDradio.com and the WURD Radio app.
The street, smuggy eye, looking at the sky, starry eyed, searching for the place, weary eyed, crying.
You're listening to Black Women's Leadership Council on WURD Radio, 96.1 FM, 900 AM, streaming live on WURDradio.com, and we're back. So, Rita, have you been following what's happening in what they call Brooklyn Center, Minnesota?
Yeah, that whole Minneapolis thing is it's right on the edge of being an incredibly violent situation there. I have been following it. I'm shocked. I think I'm still shocked about the body cam footage that they showed over and over of how this police officer shot this 20-year-old Dante. His name is Dante, right?
Yeah, 90 or something, I think.
Yeah, and how that whole thing happened. And people are saying, why did he resist? Why did he run? Why did he panic? Because he's afraid. He was afraid of being shot. He was afraid of what actually happened. He was afraid of that happening to him. And when black and brown boys are stopped by the police, that's their biggest fear, that things are going to escalate out of control and they're going to end up hurt or dead. So I'm shocked about the footage, and I'm upset and frustrated about some people's reactions to the footage, in that he should not have panicked, he should not have resisted, he should not have tried to run, jump back in the car.
There is an expectation that people who don't view others as human with the same rights are always going to have the same knee-jerk reaction about questioning the actions of the victim, not the perpetrator.
Exactly.
All you have to do is play the same record. Doesn't matter what the case is. It is always going to be some jerks, and that's who they are, who can't get in touch with their inner racism, that will allow them to see the same set of circumstances and then change. All you got to do is just change the color of the victim and the perpetrator, and you'll get a different reaction.
That's right.
Because when you don't see a man's humanity, then you look for all of the knee-jerk excuses to justify something that has happened. Because what we have here basically is that it is a lack of seeing others as you see yourself.
That's right. That's right.
This oppression of having police as an occupying force and to police black bodies, because in every set of circumstances that we see, it is that whether you're walking, running, driving, eating, all of the other places, that you have to be over-policed.
Mm-hmm.
It was no real reason when he panicked, and he got back into his car because they said to him that he had some sort of warrant for an arrest.
Right.
And warrant for arrest in Philadelphia can be a whole bunch different than warrant for arrest in small counties and things, because you can have a warrant for arrest for very minor things.
That's right.
And I can't recall whether or not, their gun laws are very, very liberal. And so I would imagine that he probably could have had a right to have carried a gun. But with a lot of kids in those areas, they can be lazy and not renew permits or whatever. I don't know. But it didn't, I don't really know. I'm just listening to the news whether or not the warrant that they had was for his failure to appear in court, and that failure to appear was based on a charge of carrying an unlicensed weapon.
Right. Right.
Which has a different point of view. If you're in Philadelphia, where the laws is very strict that you cannot have certain weapons whatsoever, and then you have to get a license. And if you go to certain states, all you have to do go down to the local Piggly Wiggly, and you can get your license. So, you have to put it in context.
Put it in context. And they say it was, it was a warrant for a misdemeanor. So him carrying a gun without a license or permit became a misdemeanor, but he failed to show up in court to answer for that. And so they issued the warrant. Right, and he paid for it with his life. Just like the Army lieutenant that they stopped in Virginia And now the police officer who just who abused him unmercifully has lost his job. They've threatened to take action in his Army career against him. Pepper sprayed him for no apparent reason, but he told them he was afraid. He said, I'm afraid to get out. Your guns are drawn. I don't know why you stopped me. I don't understand what's going on. I'm afraid. I am afraid. And they pepper sprayed him anyway. Now, the 20-year-old didn't even have an opportunity to say, I'm afraid. He complied and got out the car. And then they were going to handcuff him. They took the handcuffs off, and he tried to jump back in the car. I mean, why can't you see what's wrong with you as the police officer, the responding police officer, that you can't see that this person is afraid and try to de-escalate that?
Rita, they don't see his humanity.
They don't see his humanity.
His humanity. And, you know, it is so, they're so plugged into black, young, therefore criminal. Okay?
You're so right.
Or old black and therefore criminal. Just the blackness is the criminal part of it.
The blackness makes you a criminal, makes you dangerous, makes you intimidating, makes them fearful. And so that's what it's all about. They're afraid too. So everybody's afraid in that situation. And instead of trying to de-escalate to a point where people can talk to each other, it's always escalated up to a point where violence happens and the black person ends up shot or dead or both. It just
oppose it to all of the killers, and I'll put it that way, mass shooters who were not shot dead on sight. If they got away, they got, you know, the young man who killed all of those people in the church in
yes.
You know, he fled, I forget to where, in North Carolina or something. He was picked up. They stopped and gave him McDonald's.
Yeah.
He was thirsty and hungry, and they fed him. And, you know, there was no, oops, he made a furtive move and we got to shoot him.
Right.
He's a dangerous criminal because he just killed 9 people.
Yeah, because he was a dangerous criminal.
Humanity in those circumstances.
Right.
And we tell you time and time again where white perpetrators are brought in alive, and blacks, and they have actually done something like kill people.
Exactly.
Mass
and
shooting.
So they're dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
But they're brought in alive. They're not even bumped upside the head and subdued, you know, in a violent, extreme way. They look perfectly fine when they get to the police station. They're fed, you know, they're given something to drink, and they make it to the police station to get booked into custody. But black bodies don't seem to make it there. Now, we're not saying every single stop. We know the difference. But percentage-wise, black men are shot more often than white. And it's just a statistical fact. You can look it up anywhere. It's the statistical fact in accordance with the population. The population of black people, the population of white people. More black people get shot and killed in any time they have some run-in with the police than white people. And it's a known fact, and you can look it up, and it's out there. So those are the facts. That's the life we have to live. Those are the circumstances of our lives every single day. Our brothers, our uncles, our fathers, they're in danger when they leave the house.
Well, I would say that we could say that it was just the men, but it's the women too.
It's the women too.
The black family that's in danger. You know, when you think about, you know, we're in this COVID period and people have been cooped up in their houses, and you want to go out, and so you don't want to do a lot of airline traveling and flying places, so you're more prone to want to take a car ride somewhere. But you also have to be in fear. You could have a family doing nothing but
That's right.
wife and children in the car. And the next thing you know, depending on who the officer might be and what their biases might be, pull them over, and you might be minus a family member because of the, it is just, and you have to understand the trauma that happens for people of color. Very
every day.
Every day. So have you been following the trial, the Derek Chauvin trial?
Not as closely as I did last week, but I know that they put, so the defense is now putting on their case, I think starting Monday.
Well, let me bring you up to date on the defense's, how the defense is handling its side defending their client. And I think I could probably sum it up. Find Derek Chauvin not guilty because he was a big black guy with superhuman strength who was wild out on drugs and had a great big heart, physical heart.
Right.
Who didn't lay in the street enjoying the comfort of a knee in his back because he kept resisting as he was dying because he was grabbing on something in that show. I'm just giving you the
I know. That's right. That is what the guy said.
They had a mean, ferocious crowd that included a 9-year-old girl who that instilled fear in the hearts of the police officers. And so therefore, 3 of them had to sit on George Floyd because all of these things were going on. That's the defense.
Yeah, you could tell that's what he was going to try and put forward last week and the week before when the prosecutor was putting on their case. So, it's a big stretch. Everybody saw.
Listen, when nothing else works, reach for the racist tropes. When nothing else works, just, go,
That's right.
There's got to be at least 1 or 2 racists on the jury that can hang this case.
That's right.
Just signal and send the signals. He was big. He was black. He was scary. He was dangerous.
He wouldn't lay down. He wouldn't stop moving. He wouldn't stop resisting. He just kept moving. So they had to keep applying pressure because that meant he was resisting. Any movement meant he was resisting. Not that he was choking or that he was dying. Any movement meant he was resisting. Now, how ridiculous. It just doesn't make reasonable sense. It's clear that the defense is stretching and trying to find and trying to create some kind of doubt where there should be none.
Well, the defense doesn't have a case.
Nope.
And then I didn't get to see all of it, but they had, and I just had to chuckle, Rita. So they have a forensic guy, pathologist, who practiced in Baltimore,
right.
But when they were going through his his resume, rather, the first thing he said when he opened up his mouth is he's from South Africa. He's testifying.
That's who they found, right?
I said, but he said he and I don't mean to stereotype, but I was like, yeah, you're from South Africa,
right? And he was. It's not like he was young.
No. He's a retired guy, but
yeah.
he was retired, so he was like there doing the apartheid system,
right?
So he was like, I was like, oh gee, you couldn't find nobody else. You had to go
find nobody else.
Came from South Africa, and of course, and the backdrop to that is, and I'll tell you what the backdrop to that is as soon as I come back from break, because Jordan is saying break. You're listening to Black Women's Leadership Council on WURD Radio, 96.1 FM, 900 AM, streaming live on WURDradio.com. We'll be right back.
Hello, this is Councilmember Kendra Brooks. I'm calling with important information about COVID-19 vaccines. In the coming weeks, all Philadelphians over the age of 16 will be eligible for vaccination. However, you must be registered with the city to get vaccinated. Register today at www.phila.gov and fill out the vaccine interest form or email covid@phila.gov. If you cannot complete the online form, call 311 to get registered. Your information is confidential. Get registered today. Thank you.
This is not a fad for us.
We will not resume our regular programming when things die down. We're not black to help our bottom line or because it's politically correct. We're not joining a fight. This has been our fight, our message, our people. Black lives have always mattered here. We are
Undeniably,
indefatigably, unapologetically, permanently Black Talk Media.
WURD.
Sankofa Freedom Academy Charter School is an African-centered public freedom school now accepting student enrollment from kindergarten through 12th grade. Visit www.sfacs.us and click the Intent to Enroll button to complete the form for the 2021-22 school year. For more information, call 215-288-2001.
Spring forward with premium nutrition meals. Enjoy a variety of new exciting entrees along with rewards and referrals program that pays you to eat and tell. As always, everything is chef crafted, freshly prepared, and delivered to your door. Just visit premiumnutritionmeals.com, where listeners get $10 off 6 meals or more. Enter code PREMIUMWORD at checkout.
Want the latest in word swag?
Check out the shop tab on wordradio.com. Hoodies, tees, and more in a variety of colors. The shop tab on wordradio.com. Show the world that you're all about Black
Talk Media.
You're listening to The Source with Black Women's Leadership Council on WURD Radio.
Streaming live on WURDradio.com and the WURD Radio app.
Say, say, say. Say, say, say. Say a prayer for me. Strange fruit come down off that tree. Cut it down under your feet. Juicy fruit so bittersweet. Fruit stand tall, these roots go deep. Strange fruit busting on these thieves. Ancestors don't take defeat. Left the scent of victory in the air, tigress and tweed. Oh, Lenteric, you carry. I'm tired, green buried. The truth of these you carried. Future you in your chariot. Say a prayer for me.
You're listening to Black Women's Leadership Council on WURD Radio 96.1 FM, 900 AM, streaming live on wordradio.com. And we're back, Rita. So The thing that I wanted to say about the doctor is that, beyond him being from South
right,
during the period of apartheid.
That's right.
When he was down in Baltimore, he testified for the and I don't know whether it was for the defense or not, but what they label him is a pro-police medical examiner. And he testified in a case where the family of the deceased is suing him because he is giving the same kind of defense testimony in this case as he gave in that case where he refused to acknowledge that this young man, whose name I can't remember at the moment, died of the same thing that happened to George Floyd.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And so, and I was listening to the legal experts who were indicating that they did not think that the prosecution could bring in this lawsuit against him because to impeach him. And so that the judge probably won't allow it. So I was very interested in seeing exactly how the prosecution would handle the cross on him.
Yeah.
And, but, I think everybody is entitled to a defense. But,
of course. I mean, that's
that defense is one that is mired in racism.
That's true. I mean, so that's just the everyday fact of it, is that the whole criminal justice system is mired in racism. Okay, that's what makes the wheel spin in this country, in the criminal justice system, is that it's a racist system that is put together and built to oppress and put us in jail. Okay, the biases, the out and out racial prejudice that the police officers, the prosecutors, the judges, the correctional officers, the parole system, the whole system is built to keep us in jail. So it's a racist system that we can't win. Now, yes, we are entitled to a defense. Everyone is. That's our constitutional right. However, the system that we have to turn to for the defense, the system that we have to turn to is a racist system that is built to put Black people in jail because of the overwhelming racial prejudice and biases that the people who are in charge at every level that they have inside of them.
Well, I think that we kind of understand the system from our perspective, and we have to really work on changing it. And so that's why it's extremely important in our conversation at 3:30 today when we talk to the Attorney General Josh Shapiro about the challenges to the election laws here and the challenges to gerrymandering the Supreme Court. So there are numbers of things, and that's why we spent some time having some of the appellate level candidates on, and we need to really drill down and look at those who are running locally for the Court of Common Pleas and the municipal service. Those are important. We don't need
those are the most important.
That's right, but we also have to stop this nonsense where people get paid to push a candidate and they don't, you have to have some sort of belt line. I don't believe that we should stop people from, plying their trade and making their money from things that they do.
Of course.
But I think that if you are a principled person, then you ought to have a belt line, and no matter how much money someone is going to pay you, you ought to be very careful about promoting that person when when they get on the bench that they're going to do harm to your community. We're going to take a call. We have Ken from Cheltenham.
Hello.
Oh, this is Ken.
Hey, good afternoon, ladies.
Good afternoon.
How are you? Much love and condolences to the Chappelle family.
Oh, yes.
For sure.
We really do miss her.
Yes, and like I always say and always know and want to make sure that you guys know, we love you dearly, we respect you, and we admire our women. And we love and respect you guys especially.
Thank you, Kenny.
What I want to say is, James Baldwin said it best, that I am frightened and I'm scared. I'm frightened beyond myself to consider how delusional white people are and how long they've been delusional about their racism and about who they are and what we are. They've been delusional for so long that they've become moral monsters. In their morality that they make up, they are, everything that's good, everything that's moral, the moral compass for the world, the democracy that we practice is a model for the world. The more they stand on this moral cloud, this moral mountain, and can pass judgment internationally. Everybody, but especially here. And it's frightening to be under such a moral delusional system where everything, from the school system prepares us to be pawns, prepares us, our kids, to go to jail, to be uneducated. And I always tell people, why do you think education costs so much in this country? Because they don't want you to get the best. They want you to get what they think we deserve. And the delusion is so deep and for so long that they really actually believe, just like the Capitol protests, they believe that Trump won and that there was a conspiracy. And they believe those police and those authorities, those officials, those were their uncles, their cousins, their aunts, their nieces, their brothers, their sons. So they wasn't going to come down on them like they would on black people. But I just wanted to put my 2 cents in for the day. And thank you, ladies, for everything you do and everything you continue to do. We love you.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you, Ken.
Oh, Rita, so there's no absolutes anywhere. But here's what I would say. When good people don't stand up, and I think there's a quote, and I'm not going to be able to quote it, okay, because I just remember that it is. Okay, that it came from Martin.
Just paraphrase.
Paraphrase it. It's like, what happens when the absence of good people standing up? When good people fail to stand up, this is what we get. You can't be sympathetic to us if you're not willing to stand up. And the other thing that I would say is that when you participate in what the degradation of an individual, you are not just putting your foot on that person. You got to go down there with him to keep him down.
That's right. And
so you can't grow when you have your foot on someone else's back to keep
That's right.
And, if we're going to be great as a nation, we have to be great when everybody has a place on the team.
Of course. That's what that's the issue. That's the basis and foundation of civil rights and what we're asking for in terms of justice and freedom to live our lives fully in this country as Black people. That's the very basis of it. You can't have this great moral compass, but yet you don't see the immorality of the killings that go on against Black men and brown men in this country. And then the police officers enjoy some kind of immunity where they are not held accountable. And so the killing and the injustice just goes on and on. But you don't see that as an injustice. You rationalize and justify the behavior, and you don't hold people accountable. It goes against everything that the country stands for. But white people justify it every single day. They justify it, and they take this moral high ground for themselves. And when they're looking and standing in judgment of other people, but they never look and stand in judgment for themselves.
Well, here's the thing. That's called white supremacy.
White supremacy.
So what happens is that there are people who will say, well, I'm not racist, but you benefit from a system that is unequal. And when you don't speak up because you do benefit, it makes you almost as culpable when you fail to stand up and recognize that.
You have to be called culpable.
I want to go back to something that Ken just said, about the education system failing. The education system has not only failed Black people, it's failing white people too.
Yes.
When you teach a very slanted history, leaving out the full picture because you want to bolster the hierarchy of white supremacy, you cheat your children too. You cheat them, and they're not going to be as competitive. And the competition, when you look around the world and you see the level of education, that children in China are getting, the children in India, the children in some of these countries are getting, and the children in European countries.
Yes.
They're what they teach here in the U.S., even in institutions of higher learning, is almost on the same level of what other communities across the world get in high school. And
that's
so
right.
And I think it's on purpose, because you dumb down America, and so people won't question. What they give us is a big dose of the Kardashians and and all of the other stuff,
right?
And not enough of the critical thinking that we need to have.
The critical thinking, that's where we're lacking.
That's why an idiot like Trump could become, I wake up some mornings and I still pinch myself that Trump was ever president.
I know. It was a horrible time. Those 4 years were rough.
How did that happen to this country? How? And then I'm totally amazed how during the period that he was president, that there were lots of people who tried to dissect what he said and did as if he was making sense.
I know. I know. I mean, we laugh now and we say, how could that have happened? But it actually happened because white people are used to rationalizing and justifying things that are unjustifiable. They're used to that. They're used to that because that's how they get to the point of white supremacy and live their lives that way. Or they just put a wall up and act like it's not happening. And like you said, they're still culpable. They're still culpable for the racism that goes on.
I'm not. We're going to take a call from Maurice from Southwest.
Ladies, how are you today?
Hey, Maurice.
Hi, Maurice.
I heard that. I don't know what that was earlier, but it just, to me, it doesn't seem like they're talking to the people.
Right.
That's the disconnect. It's like a disconnect. It's like they talk to somebody in Levittown or Paoli. They're not talking to Philadelphia residents. It's like when the lady said, "Oh, we have a tip line." Well, why don't you give out the number? Why are you telling us we have a tip line and don't give us the number? Every time I get on this phone, I give out the number. It's 215-686-8477. I give it out all the time. But why me, a citizen, a radio contributor, got to do their job? I mean, I've been in law enforcement, but what I'm saying is these guys been to college, they have degrees, they have professions in this, and they're supposed to know. But who gives about murder slideshows? I don't understand what they're doing because it's not helping. What they should be working on right now, and it's not going to solve everything. They need to get with the private sector, and they need to get with city government, like with that soda fund. Put that money together and get some summer jobs for these kids, because the hotter it gets, the worse it's going to get. If they don't have something for idle minds to do when this weather gets 95 and 100, we haven't seen murder yet. And we got to be prepared for the tidal wave, and we're not being prepared at all. We just we're worried about what's happening, which is important, in other parts of the country. They're marching here in Philadelphia for that situation, but we need marching for our situation. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
So I won't leave it alone because you ladies are doing a great job.
I want you to hold on because we're going to go to break, and then I want to ask you a question on the other side of it. You're listening to Black Women's Leadership Council on WURD Radio, 96.1 FM, 900 AM, streaming live on WURDradio.com. We'll be right back.
Recovery starts with a call. Pennsylvania's Substance Use Disorder Hotline is staffed by real people who are trained to help. They're here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They'll get you or your loved one into treatment regardless of your access to insurance. If you or someone you know is suffering from addiction, call 1-800-662-HELP. Recovery starts with a call.
Paid for with Pennsylvania taxpayer dollars.
Nappy-style hair products are formulated for today's Black men and women's hair, embracing ancestral hairstyles. Come and experience these products. Beard oil for men, cream paste, and napping gel growth oil for braids. Go to www.nappystyles.com or The Movement in Mount Airy, 7133 Germantown Avenue, or African Cultural Art Forum, 221 South 52nd Street, or Culture Exchange, 1450 Point Breeze Avenue. Be happy to be nappy.
You're listening to The Source with Black Women's Leadership Council on WURD Radio.
Streaming live on WURDradio.com and the WURD Radio app.
Spend it on the have-nots. Money, we make it. Before we see it, you take it. Oh, make me wanna holler the way they do my life. Yeah. Make me wanna holler the way they do my life. This ain't living, this ain't living. No, no, baby, this ain't living. No, 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 no. Inflation, no chance to increase finance. Bills pile up, sky high. Send that boy off to die. Oh, make me wanna holler the way they do my life. Yeah, make me wanna holler the way they do my life. Oh,
WURD Radio, in partnership with the Colorectal Cancer Alliance, Independence Blue Cross Foundation, Penn Medicine, and LabCorp, have teamed up to launch Go to Know. Go to Know is a new public health campaign to reduce colorectal cancer in the Black community. Request your free, easy, at-home colorectal cancer screening test called a FIT Kit. The FIT Kit is designed to provide early detection of colorectal cancer. The FIT test doesn't require any fasting or colon cleanses, and it can be done in a matter of minutes. Most importantly, you'll learn how to make sure you and your family members can stay well and live a long, healthy life. Go to WURDradio.com and click on the Go to Know banner or call 1-877-422-2030 to learn how you can get your free at-home FIT Kit screening test.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Maurice, are you still there?
Yeah, I have a T-shirt for that. Don't let colon rectal cancer rear-end you. That's my T-shirt.
That's a good one, Maurice.
Thank you. Maurice, we want to continue to have a ongoing discussion regarding this violence and crime, and I want you to continue to follow these the mayor's press conferences so that we can get your take on it. You know, so this is being done every other week, and so if you will, I really want to have your opinion on those.
The thing I'm saying, when I worked up at Greater Prison, I worked in the intake union. We had one block up there where we had 750 young black youths on that block. It was 2 football fields long. And we had to talk to them. You know what they need? They need hope. They need a fish. They don't need fish. They need a fishing pole. And we're not giving them a fishing pole. we might give them some money, but that's not what they want. They want to earn that money. They want to feel proud. They want to be out on the corner, and instead of seeing a bunch of women at 6:30 in the morning catching that trolley, they want to be getting on that trolley with them. See, that's what we're not doing, because all these foreign stores, I got nothing against them, because all they doing is filling the void that we left, but we don't have black opportunities or mentors in our neighborhoods anymore, because we don't believe in keeping the old shops, Mr. Cookie's store, Miss Mary's store. We don't have the laundromats. We don't have the hardware stores where we could give a young person in our neighborhood a job. We don't have them opportunities anymore. We need to get back to that.
Well, I thank you. We have the DA hanging on, so I thank you, Maurice.
Yes, thank you, Maurice.
Thank you. DA Larry Krasner?
Hello. How are you today?
Hey, how are you? How are you?
Hi, Larry.
Thank you. Great to hear from both of you today.
Thank you. Thank you. So we got a lot to talk about today. But I wanted to start with, I had gotten a phone call last week that questioned the racial makeup of your office, and I wanted and I reached out to you and I asked you to send me something on it, and I wanted you to come on and explain what it looked like when you got there, what it looks like now, and why it's important, because our whole thing here with Black Women's Leadership is how are we going to do something about the high level of gun violence in this city.
Yes.
What we've gotten, Larry, up to this point is everybody sort of pointing the finger in different directions. And, you know, what we want is, we don't want too many more solos. We want people to sing in a group chorus. And what we're getting from the elected bodies here is that the mayor holds a press conference every other week. He's on there with his people. City council has come out with some new initiatives. And it looks like, you know, we're not playing in this same band.
Yeah.
So let's start with the first things first. Tell me about the racial makeup of your office, how it was when you found it, what it is today.
So I'm happy to do that. In fact, I'm really proud to do that, because it has been a huge emphasis in this administration to make recruiting of talent and of very capable, diverse people our top priority. And what you're talking about, both at the level of government pointing at each other, and what you're talking about at the level of trying to make an office representative, it's all about unity. You know, it's all about bringing people together who should not be apart. So in December of 2017, that was before we came in, there were 72 Black employees at the district attorney's office. This is out of about 600 total staff, 300 lawyers, 300 staff. There were only 72. As of now, we have 170. So during our administration, we have more than doubled the number of Black employees in the office. In fact, the increase is bigger than doubled. It's a 136% increase, and we're very proud of that. If we just look at attorneys, in December of 2017, before we came in, there were 35 Black attorneys. There are now 55 as of today. But let me tell you something. I just got done hiring some attorneys, and we are hopeful that in this hiring cycle, we will get to the point of having 70 attorneys if we get there who are Black. If we get there, we will have doubled the number of Black attorneys in the office. Obviously, we're also interested in people of other backgrounds. We are interested in brown attorneys as well. And so if we look at the category of people of color, which of course would be Black attorneys as well as these other groups, what we see is that when we first came in, out of a staff of 600, there were 110 people of color working in the office. That number now has more than doubled. It is 248 out of 600. So you're looking at an office that's significantly different than when we came in. You know, when we came in, 80% of the attorneys and 70% of all the staff were white, in a city where the population of white people is approximately 37%. We have shifted that in really significant ways, and we are very, very proud of the fact that we have shifted it. It's what we should do. But let me tell you how we did it, because in many ways I think that's the more interesting story. Our highest priority, and this really came from Bob Listenby, who is, our first assistant who worked as Barack Obama's chief of juvenile justice in his second administration. We made recruitment a top requirement. So we took all the top 20 law schools, plus all the Philly law schools, plus every HBCU law school that remains, and there are 6. And we went personally to all of these law schools for 2 consecutive years. We would have done it again this year, but for the pandemic, so we had to do it virtually. But when I say we went personally, I mean I went personally to these law schools so that we could speak to these students and try to tell them why being a progressive prosecutor in Philly is the thing to do. Some of them, frankly, were shocked. With one exception, there had been no recruiting at these HBCU law schools by the prior administration. There had been no recruiting in certain places in the South, Southwest, and in the West during prior administrations, which is how you get an office where, everybody looks like they came from one neighborhood in Philly. It was a lot of work. It took a lot of time, but it was necessary because what we wanted to attract was the most talented people. And some of these top-rated schools had a ton of diverse talent in there. We wanted the most talented people, including their diverse talent, and we wanted to explain to them why being a prosecutor in Philly is special, why being a progressive prosecutor is special, why if you're a mission-driven person, if your life is driven by the idea of improving things and making the world better, this is where you need to come. And we have been extremely successful. Make no mistake, it is not easy for a person of color, it is not easy for a black person to get into a law school. There is one hurdle after another for many of them, not all of them, but for many of them, there's one hurdle after another: educational hurdles, economic hurdles of not having connections within the family, of not necessarily having access to resources and people who can help them to do the best application in different situations. It's tough. And so for a lot of people who are of color or are black and get into these law schools, it represents a family's achievement, a lifetime achievement, luring them away from making more money when their family may truly need it, luring them away from the legitimacy of being in a big law firm. Not easy, but we had success. And we didn't just attract, people so that we could check a box. We attracted people who are future leaders, people who have an intact moral compass, people who are diligent, people who are talented. I believe it has made a tremendous difference. And since you mentioned gun violence, I'll give you a talking point on that. Our conviction rate for shootings, both fatal shootings and non-fatal shootings, after we started all this recruiting and did some other measures, but after we were bringing these folks into the office, our conviction rate for shooting is nearly 85%. It is an increasing conviction rate. It's one of the highest conviction rates in the last 5 years for any administration, but it's also a conviction rate that reflects that we're trying to make sure that anyone who we are prosecuting is in fact guilty and is prosecuted in compliance with the Constitution and with the law. We believe the process should be fair. We believe that people who get convicted and pay a serious price for being involved in a shooting, we believe that they need to be the people who did the shooting, right? So we are very, very proud of it, and I believe it is directly attributable to the fact that we went wherever we possibly could. And I went myself. Bob Listenby, my first assistant, and Judge Temin, my other first assistant, went themselves to recruit at these 30 different law schools all over the country. We have recruited people from essentially every law school, including all 6 of these HBCUs, and they are truly excellent. So we're really proud of that. I know that sometimes people just like to say things. They like to look at a report from before we showed up and say, well, that place is not very diverse. It wasn't before we showed up. But since we showed up, I have to say it's one of my proudest achievements.
So we're going to take a break, and then I want to come back on the other side. I want to ask you a couple of questions. You're listening to Black Women's Leadership Council on WURD Radio, 96.1 FM, 900 AM, streaming live on WURDradio.com. We'll be right back.
You probably heard it before, but one of the best ways to stay safe from COVID is by avoiding crowds. That's better. Also, when you're out in public, make sure you stay 6 feet away from strangers or people you don't live with. It's okay to say, "Can I have some space, please?"
Well, it's going to be a beautiful sunny day today, and we can expect much.
If you're gonna have a get-together with friends and family, have it outside. And remember to keep those 6 feet of social distance. And last but not least, wear a mask that covers your nose and mouth with no gaps. They slow the spread of COVID or new forms of the virus called variants. And make sure you get your vaccine when it's your turn. We're all out here trying our best, and it's making a difference. We just gotta keep it up. We can do this.
To learn more about slowing the spread, visit cdc.gov/coronavirus. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
Okay, Her's new fire potato chips and cheese curls, they are spicy. Whew, they're hottest snacks yet. Hold on. Whew. But you know, it's not just heat. There's some nice sweet and savory stuff going on too. Ooh, there's that heat again. It burns, but it burns so tasty. Ooh, that's hot. Find Her's Fire Snacks at your store today. Whew, taste the flavor, feel the heat, break out the Her's.
Spring forward to throwback. All this month, when you start or renew your WURD membership, you'll get exclusive WURD throwback swag, vintage backpacks, books, and tees. While supplies last. Offer ends April 30th. Sow seeds into Black Talk Media and grow with us. Visit wordradio.com/join now to start or renew today. This is WURD Radio.
96.1 FM.
And 900 AM WURD Philadelphia.
Black Talk Media.
You're listening to The Source with Black Women's Leadership Council on WURD Radio.
Streaming live on WURDradio.com and the WURD Radio app.
So we're going to come right back. Larry, here's my question. You know, we drill down. We've had the police commissioner on. We had several council people on. We have you on. And we're going to have the attorney general on. And hopefully we're going to have the police commissioner back. And we're going to talk to anybody and everybody who have a stake in how we can address this gun violence. Now, when I'm talking to different people, here are some of the comments that get made. You just mentioned that you have had an increase in prosecutions of gun violence. And then I'll get an elected official, not the police commissioner, and I won't call out who these officials are, who will say that the police are making the arrest, but you are not getting the convictions.
Well, I'm happy to answer that. People need to know what the facts are. I think a lot of them are, frankly, not well informed. Here's the truth, and I don't say this to throw anybody under the bus, but it's the truth. For a very long time in Philly, the rate at which police solved shootings was only 2 out of 10. 2 out of 10. 8 out of 10 people got away with that shooting. During the pandemic, which did make everything more difficult for all of law enforcement, the rate at which they were solving shootings for a while was 1 out of 10. If we look at homicides, they've always solved homicides at a better rate than that, but they're still solving homicides at a rate that is less than half. And during the first 2 months of this year, the rate of solving homicides was only about 26%. We can't ignore that. When you then look at what happens with the homicide cases where they solve the case and they send it to us, the shooting cases where they solve the case and they send it to us, which currently is only about 1 or 2 out of 10 for the shooting cases, we see a very, very high rate of conviction. Our rate of conviction was almost 85%. So, look, I understand when things are not going well within the lane where you work, it's tempting to say, look over there. I understand that. But we need to call it what it is. When you're solving 1 out of 10 cases and you're spending all your time pointing at the entity that prosecutes them and gets a conviction in almost every single one of them, you're saying, oh, the problem is the convictions. You're just not being honest. Let's be honest about it. Now, I'm happy to be honest about what I think we do well and where I think we can improve. It would be pretty hard to improve on a nearly 85% conviction rate on shootings and homicides, but we want to do it. And we believe that with some more forensics, we can do it. We also believe with some joint efforts that have been underway now, either for a few months or for a year or two with this police commissioner, we believe that that has improved things and that that has helped. The bigger problem that we have is not shooting. It is not fatal shootings. It is not non-fatal shootings. That's just untrue. The bigger problem that we have had in the past has been with convictions on cases of gun possession, cases where the lead charge is having the gun. It is not doing anything with the gun, okay? That is also a serious matter. And what we see there is that there has been a spike in arrests that police are making for those cases, and there has been a decline, not going back to the beginning of my administration, but going back 5 years to 2 years before I was even in office, during the same period when they were starting to ramp up and making more and more gun arrests. The reason that the conviction rate has been coming down is that the quality of those cases is not high. That we see in many of those cases, there was another layer of evidence needed to prove that the defendant had the gun or to prove that the defendant intended to use the gun, because that's what we have to prove. Their job is not to get guns off of the street. You can do that with an electromagnet. Their job is to bring the DA's office a case that is provable beyond a reasonable doubt. And so there have been problems. Now, having said that, look, life is complicated, okay? They've had to switch tactics. The pandemic has had its effect. And so we have been working together in a way that I think is very collaborative and very positive to improve the outcomes on gun possession cases. This is how good they have gotten recently. Now that the courts are starting to starting to open up, we are having preliminary hearings in gun possession cases and in cases in which a gun was used, not shooting cases, but things like gunpoint robbery. And what we are seeing is that the rate at which these cases are now going through a preliminary hearing and then headed for trial is very high. That rate over a period of about 4 weeks is about 90%. That's a significant improvement. I think the PPD deserves credit for that. But I think we, too, deserve credit for that because we have come with one collaborative program after another with the PPD, and I'll give the commissioner, I'll give her props for having worked with us on this, and we have been able to see improvements in what they are doing, and we've been able to see improvements in what we are able to do as a consequence of that. So that's the truth. When you start to hear this vague stuff about, they're arresting people, but Krasner's not convicting them, just look at the facts. I mean, the facts speak for themselves.
Yeah. So, switching up a little bit, so I think she's referred to as the state's attorney in Baltimore, Marilyn Mosley.
Yes.
She recently has been touted because she has had this, she's taken the position of not prosecuting low-level crimes like petty drug offenses, prostitution, and some of the other things, so that the police will focus on some of the more serious crimes. What do you think about that?
I think that it makes a lot of sense for us to focus on the most serious crimes. I think that's how you get to a nearly 85% conviction rate on shootings, is if you focus on the most serious crimes. So it makes sense to me that we don't spend our time going after certain things. I've always believed that prosecuting prostitutes is basically taking victims and prosecuting victims. I don't think we should prosecute victims. I think there are public health approaches to deal with addiction, to deal with trauma. Many of them have been raped in their past. To deal with that trauma, there are public health approaches to deal with homelessness and mental illness. Many of them suffer from mental illness. But I don't think we do them any favors by putting them in jail cells and not giving them the treatment that they need and giving them permanent criminal records that make it harder when things are working out for them to get that job as a cashier at a grocery store or as a bank teller. So, obviously the devil's always in the details. It depends which offenses we're talking about. But I agree with her that we should not be prosecuting what we refer to as prostitutes. They're sex workers. I agree that we should not be prosecuting people for mere possession, just possessing, not selling, but just possessing marijuana when that is going to be the national norm within a few years. And I agree that we should be taking those resources and putting them into having a rate of solving shootings that's better than 2 out of 10. or 1 out of 10. Having a rate of solving homicides that's better than less than 1 out of 2. I totally agree with that.
And so here's another one, and let's go to Minneapolis, and right outside in one of their suburbs, what happened in Brooklyn Center, where it was a traffic stop. I'm of the impression that are we getting the best use out of the Philadelphia Police Department by having them pull people over for tags and some of these other things that I think
right.
that because every time that the police has a contact with a person of color, there's a danger that the person of color is not going to come out alive.
Yes, it's a very important point. If we look, for example, at the horrifying case of Philando Castile. Philando Castile was a man in the Twin Cities 2-3 years ago, I think approximately. He was a cafeteria worker. He was driving with his girlfriend sitting in the passenger seat, his baby, and a baby seat in the back. And he had a legal permit to carry, which means he didn't have any kind of significant criminal record at all. And he was pulled over by a Twin Cities officer. He informed the officer that he had a permit to carry because he didn't want the police officer to freak out over seeing a gun. And he asked to be allowed to reach over and show the identification that would prove that he had a permit to carry. He wanted to show the permit. And somehow in this process, in front of his girlfriend and with his baby in the back seat, the police officer outside the car pumped 7 bullets. If I recall correctly, maybe I'm off of the number, pumped 7 bullets into him in front of his baby, in front of his girlfriend, for absolutely no reason. And the one fact beyond all that stuck out to me is that when they looked, they saw he had been stopped over 40 times driving, going to and from his job as a cafeteria worker. Well, you know what? I don't get stopped 40 or 50 times. I used to get stopped when I was a teenager and I had a rusty car with a hole in it and I was mowing lawns. I used to get stopped then, but I don't get stopped 40 or 50 times. And the truth is that illegal stop and frisk in Philadelphia has, to some extent, been replaced with driving while black, by which I mean that there are certain parts of the city, certain neighborhoods, and certain streets, including portions of Germantown Avenue, where police are stopping an awful lot of people, and they are not stopping them because they're concerned about a tail light. They're not stopping them because someone rolled through a stop sign at 1 mile an hour. They're stopping them because they want to search the car, because they want to find something, be it guns or drugs. It does present this terrible danger, this terrible potential for Daunte Wright, for Philando Castile, even for George Floyd, really, because that all happened in and out of a car. It does present this terrible potential whenever you have a heightened encounter where there is a feeling of unfairness about the stop, where you have young people in that car. It presents this great danger, and we need to be very careful before we subject one particular group of people in our society, one particular neighborhood, one particular street to this kind of improper conduct. We need to be very careful. It may be that there should be adjustments in the kinds of stops that are being made because that's what is necessary to preserve life. And life should always be a higher priority than a traffic stop or finding a bag of drugs.
And I agree with that because I think that we can focus. I think that we need the police. I'm not one that goes for the disbanding of the police. But I do think that we have to rethink policing and that some of the things, there's a long history, and I don't have to, tell you about what the history of policing in the Black community has been. It is policing behavior, policing Black bodies, and restricting and there are places where Black bodies in the minds of society where they don't belong. And so make the police focus on the things that we really do need them to focus on. Violent crime. And I don't think that we need them on the roads following behind somebody because they don't have the proper tags on and all of these other things. I think there's a way to address that and a different kind of way for enforcements. But I think it's too much of that going on, and it creates a position where they can be, where you have some contact. And so I think we ought to rethink some of the levels and types of policing. I think we need more behavioral health workers. I think we need more social workers.
Yeah.
We need more people who can assist the community and help the community. And we need our police to do the things that they need to do with respect to major crime. Maybe they'll be able to solve more of the bigger things if they're not tied up chasing down the smaller things.
Well, I would like to sing in that chorus. I know you're talking about choruses, and I'm happy to baritone. Jim Kenny can sing, I don't know, bass or soprano, whatever he wants to sing. I'm happy to sing in that chorus.
Well, we all need to. And I think what we have to do is come together. This is the kind of town that, that's our, everybody protects their territory. And what we need as a community is to have everybody together working. And so this little platform that we have as Black Women's Leadership Council, we're going to call people out about that. We're going to continue to call them out about it, because what we really want in the end is a good quality of life and a good city to live in. And this city can be that. It can be that with the right people. And I don't believe in the pointing of the fingers and throwing mud for the sake of pointing fingers and throwing mud when I have not seen everybody step up to do the things that they needed to do. Rita?
Yes, and so just thank you, Larry, for coming on again. We always enjoy your time with us. I want to take you back to the beginning when you first came on. Joanne asked you about the racial makeup of your office today. So when you answered, you mentioned that the number of Black attorneys in your office was nearly double, and the number of operational staff in your office was double. Can you talk to us about why that's important to you, to double the representation in the number of attorneys as well as operational staff in your office, why that is important to you and why you sought to do that?
Well, first of all, I want the most talented people I can get. I want the hardest working people with the moral compass and the diligence. I want that. And if you're only going to look in any one group, you're not going to find them all. And honestly, that's what was going on around here. It was how they recruited. They recruit their own, and what their own meant was, it was an 80% white office of lawyers. It was a 70% white office overall. They recruited their own. I mean, I saw it for 3 decades when I was an attorney in court, and I would see prosecutors every day. That's just the reality of what they did. You don't find the best people if you are going to say, I don't want to talk to any Latinx people. I don't want to talk to people who are in HBCUs. I don't want to talk to people, who are lesbian or who are gay. I don't want to talk to those people because they don't make me feel comfortable, because they didn't go to the same school as I did, because they're not from my neighborhood. So it's really, at a very basic level, just trying to find the most talented people. And if you find the most talented people, then you will find a more diverse group of people than were here in the first place. No question in my mind, this is a significantly more talented office than when we first got here. But going beyond that, I mean, we live in a city where approximately 37% of the population is white, and 63% is Black or brown, the vast majority of them being Black. When you go into a courtroom, it is even blacker and browner than that, and it is poorer than that, right? What sense does it make, and it's almost all male in terms of the people who are actually accused of crimes, what sense does it make to try to make decisions that are fair about other people's lives but not have a representative group of people? Make no mistake, there are Black attorneys in this office who are hang-em-high attorneys who are very traditional in their approach to prosecution, who don't necessarily agree with the philosophy of this office, but they're great attorneys. They follow the policies, and they do it. You know, there are white attorneys who defy a stereotype that they would all be hang 'em high, racist types. Like color, you know, the identity of the person does not determine what they do. And we recognize that. But it doesn't change the fact that we need to have a representative office, an office that looks like the city, an office where the attorneys have had experiences that are not too different than the experiences that the victim, the witnesses, and the defendant in court have had. You know, there's a lot of power in this office, and there's a lot of decisions that can change the future of a person's life, whether it's a victim, a witness, or a defendant. So we need to have that kind of life experience, that kind of broad understanding that comes with having a diverse office. And that's what we have tried to do.
Well, we like that. I have one more question. So we all heard at the very beginning of our broadcast, we heard the mayor's press conference on his initiative to decrease gun violence in the city. And so what we came out of that with was a lack of clear understanding of how that was going to happen. How are we going to decrease the amount of gun violence in the city? How can the mayor do a better job at messaging the initiative? Because what he's doing is not working. It's very truncated. It's very choppy, and people don't see a comprehensive plan. How can he do a better job?
Well, I think we can all do a better job if we are in the same place. You know, part of the reason that my office started doing a weekly press conference on Mondays at the beginning of this year is that there was not a unified press conference going on where we had different stakeholders coming together. At that time, I issued a blanket invitation to the police commissioner whenever she's available. I know she's busy. I don't expect her to be there all the time. To the mayor whenever he's available. To any other law enforcement partner whenever they're available to join us, because we start every Monday's press conference talking about the gun violence in the prior week and what we can do about it. I wasn't trying to be snarky. I wasn't trying to provoke people. I really just want to be on the same page. And since nobody else was holding a unified press conference, I was trying to be welcoming and open the door and say, look, you're more than welcome to do it with us when you're ready. The good news is since that time, the mayor has started to do, I guess it's a biweekly press conference, partly, I think, at the urging of Councilmember Jamie Gauthier and some others about this. But we still don't have the unity that we need. I mean, I still would like to be in these conversations more than we are with the mayor. I still would like to be in these press conferences more than we are. I still would like to have even more contact with the police commissioner, than I do. And I'm not saying it to criticize. I'm not trying to whine about it, but I completely agree with you that the best ideas are going to come out with having all the criminal justice partners in the same room, figuring out where they agree, figuring out where they disagree. You know, I had a very, very constructive talk, and I won't say with who, but a very constructive talk with some people in law enforcement and in government about ATVs and about motorbikes, all-terrain vehicles that are zipping up and down our streets with people doing wheelies and, frankly, frightening a lot of drivers and causing some issues in the city. It's a complex and difficult issue. And, everybody got on that call. They all had different perspectives, but we came off the call in a much better place than when we started, with some next steps and some ideas moving forward. That's where I would like to be. You know, obviously, we're never going to stop working on this. It is heartbreaking to see these shootings. So we're not going to stop working. But, excuse me, we're not going to stop working. But we would love to also be in the room with a lot of our partners when some of these decisions are made, because we just think that there would be a better outcome if we could do that.
So, Larry, we're going to take a quick break, and I'm going to come back and tell you what I think that my dream press conference should be, that I dream of. You're listening to Black Women's Leadership Council on WURD Radio, 96.1 FM, 900 AM, streaming live on WURDradio.com. We'll be right back.
I'm Henry Louis Gates Jr. We are people of resilience. No matter what happens, we fight through the pain. We protect our traditions. We uphold our excellence. So let's protect our lives with vaccines we can trust. We can do this.
To learn more about COVID-19 vaccines, visit cdc.gov/coronavirus. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
Hi, this is Councilmember Derek Green with new information about COVID vaccines. Soon, all Philadelphians over the age of 16 will be eligible for vaccination. However, you must be registered with the city to get vaccinated. Register today at phila.gov and fill out the vaccine interest form or email covid@phila.gov. If you can't complete the form, call 311 to get registered. Your information is confidential. We all want a healthier, better Philadelphia. Get registered today.
WURD family, the Go to Know campaign for colon cancer is up and running. Go to wordradio.com and click on the Go to Know banner for your free at-home screening test. It's that simple. Click Go to Know and get your test today.
The WURD Radio newsletter, keeping you informed, engaged, and connected. Sign up by visiting wordradio.com. Scroll to the bottom of the page and type your email address under Connect with Us. You'll receive the latest information on WURD Radio, messages from our president and CEO, Sarah Lomax Reese, exclusive articles and multimedia content, and resources. Stay informed with the WURD Radio newsletter.
You're listening to The Source with Black Women's Leadership Council on WURD Radio.
Streaming live on wordradio.com and the WURD Radio app.
So we're back, and so Larry, here's my dream press conference. I want to see a press conference where you're standing there, the police commissioner is standing there, the mayor is standing there, the president of city council is standing there, the U.S. attorney is standing there, the state police is standing there, the attorney general is standing there, the ATF is standing there, and having a press conference that says, we mean business about gun violence. And here are all of the agencies that have some pieces in charge, and here are the things that we're going to be working together to do. Then I think that when we turn on our television sets, radios, all of this other stuff, we really think that we have people who are saying, you know what, Black lives really do matter in Philadelphia, because there's a higher incidence of gun violence there, because it's a larger city, not because it's more violent than any other place. Yeah. But the more people you have. And then I want some real talk about, I've asked this question, Rita's asked this question, Emma Chappelle asked this question over and over again. And, you know, and I've said this before, you know, I'm not adverse to a good conspiracy. And so I understand the ghost gun situation where people are going to these shows and putting these guns together. But I also think that, you know, Kareem, whoever in North Philly, he ain't building these guns. And it's been, you know, it is a temptation for genocide to put guns in the hands of kids. They didn't, you know, they're not going somewhere to get them. Somebody's bringing it to them in the abundance. And and that's an ATF thing of tracing it. But I do believe that they ride into the hood and have them in the back of their car and open up the trunk and sell this stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I want the dream team working on this stuff. What are your thoughts?
If you can schedule it, I will be the first one there. I could not agree with you more. I mean, look, I don't want to paint a negative picture. The fact is, I recently did do a joint press conference with Attorney General Shapiro, and it was about ghost guns, and we were all there, and it was very mutually supportive. The mayor was there as well. And it is also true that at the Christie Playground, we had city council president, we did have the mayor, I was there, we had some council members, we had representative of the police commissioner. I think once we did actually have the police commissioner. So there have been occasions when this happens, but it needs to be steady. It needs to be all the time. In my perfect world, this would be a once-a-week event. I did a long call yesterday with certain people in federal law enforcement. And also with local law enforcement, with representatives of the police department. There are concerns about what may happen as a consequence of what's going on in the Twin Cities, obviously. And none of us want there to be any violence in Philadelphia or the surroundings. None of us want to see property destruction, again, in Philadelphia or its surroundings. And we have to deal with the reality that you have a historically, nationally important trial about a uniformed police officer killing a black civilian, and in the middle of the trial, the same thing happens again, right? So there is potential here for something very serious. That, to me, was really a pretty good example, and not the first example, of all kinds of law enforcement entities working together. The U.S. Attorney's Office was on that call. So were multiple federal agencies, including the FBI, as you might imagine. Reminds me a little bit about the joint effort that was so successful in protecting our vote during the presidential election. So I'm all about that. Once again, I want to sing your praises because I think that's exactly how we should be. B, I want to be in that chorus.
Well, I'm going to have an opportunity to ask Attorney General Josh Shapiro, because he's on now, and we're going to bid you adieu, and we will be talking to you soon. And certainly we're going to be following up on most of the questions that we've asked you today. Thank you for coming on.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you. So we have the esteemed Attorney General Josh Shapiro on with us. Good afternoon, Josh.
Anytime you call me esteemed, that's a good day for me. It's good to hear your voice, Ms. Bell.
Listen.
Hi, Josh. It's Rita.
Hi, Rita. Hope you guys are doing okay.
We are. We are. We're trying to hold it up, Josh, and make the changes. And so we got so much to ask you, and we know we got a compressed time. So I wanted you to start with, having you as the Attorney General as our top cop in Pennsylvania. You have to put a stop to a whole bunch of stuff. And one of the things that we want to first talk about is these pending election laws. And where do you think they stand, and what do you think that your office can do about it? And then what do you need us to do as the listening audience?
Well, look, we saw an attack on Pennsylvanians' right to vote leading up to the 2020 election. In fact, there were 19 different lawsuits that were put forth by Donald Trump and his enablers. And we beat back every single one of them. I defended the Commonwealth. I defended every voter. And to be clear, Joanne and Rita, they weren't trying to make it harder for people who look like me to vote. They were trying to make it hard for folks who look like you to vote, if you want to be real about it. And we defended the Commonwealth laws, and we stopped that every step of the way. And then after all the votes were cast, they then spent 21 different lawsuits on trying to make sure certain people's votes didn't actually count, right? They weren't recorded. And we won every single one of those lawsuits as well. Since the campaign ended and the election was over and Joe Biden became president, you're now seeing in state legislatures across the country efforts to roll back the right to vote, particularly in our black and brown communities. We saw that most notably in Georgia. But what I want folks here to understand in Philadelphia and all across Pennsylvania is that it could happen here as well. And in fact, the same bills that have been put forth in Georgia have been introduced here in Pennsylvania. And the only reason that they will not become law here in Pennsylvania is because we have a Democratic governor who has said he would veto those bills if it made it to his desk. But recall, well, Trump was governor. We had a Republican governor, Chuck Corbett. He signed bills like that into law. He signed the discriminatory voter ID law into place to make it harder for people to vote, particularly poor black and brown and elderly black and brown members of our community across Pennsylvania. So we know it can happen here. And what I need your listeners to do is to be vigilant about it, to call it out, to make sure that they are telling their state reps and their state senators to be against those kinds of bills.
Look, we've made too much progress in this country when it comes to civil rights and voting rights, and God knows we've got a ways more to go. But the last thing we should be doing is moving backwards. We should always be moving forwards. And what they're doing in Georgia is backwards, and what they would love to do here in Pennsylvania, if the Republicans in Harrisburg got their way, is to move backwards alongside Georgia. And I will not let that happen.
Well, we are certainly here to raise the voices in order to do that. You know, I was telling Rita, we need our own Stacey Abrams here too. I mean, we have a lot of Black women working to try to do it and to beat it back. And so, we're going to be on the case of raising the issues. And anytime that a bill seems like it's getting ready to move, we're going to be calling everybody to the table to see what we need to do.
I think that's right. And listen,
a little bit. Go ahead.
Pardon me. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to speak over you. We had a little bit of a bad connection. But the only thing I would say is it's not enough when you call your state rep and state senator for them to say, well, I'm going to vote against it. We need them to be out there full-throated, fighting back against this, exposing the people who are trying to take away your right to vote. And God bless Stacey Abrams. And we do need more Stacey Abramses around the country. I'm trying to do my part, and we need everybody to do theirs to defeat this effort.
So moving on to the Supreme Court, the gerrymandering, would you explain to our audience what that is all about and how they're attempting to do that?
Absolutely. So listen, we have 3 appellate courts in Pennsylvania, Commonwealth and Superior, which is like our mid-level appellate court, and then we've got the state Supreme Court. And through it all, you, the voter, get to elect each and every member of that court to full terms, of those courts to full terms. It's about 30 or so judges. What the politicians in Harrisburg want to do is take away your right to vote in our courts. And as you correctly stated in the way you asked the question, gerrymander our courts so that each region, right, would elect 1 judge per court. So you would go from electing about 30 judges to electing basically 3 judges. And what they're really trying to do is dilute the power of people who have put these judges on the bench and instead put the power in the pockets of the Harrisburg insiders and their buddies. And we simply will not stand for that. We have pushed back on it. We've mobilized coalitions against it. Folks from the left to the right, to the business community, there are many people who have come out against this. I'm hopeful that the people who are pushing this in Harrisburg have thought twice about it and recognize that they don't have the votes now. But make no mistake, this is part of a broader effort to try and undermine your voice in the system. They want to make it harder for you to vote. They want to make it harder for you to pick your judges. They want to gerrymander your legislative districts in ways that make it harder for you to elect the kind of people that you want to elect to represent your neighborhood. It's part of a concerted effort here in Pennsylvania to minimize your voice. And I simply will not allow that. We will use all of the legal tools in our power, as the Attorney General, to stand up against that and mobilize coalitions to fight back against it. What I'm seeing from people across Pennsylvania is just extraordinary levels of engagement to protect the vote. And that is really heartening. It's exciting to see people in the community rise up and say, there's no way I'm letting these politicians in Harrisburg take away my voice. And they're fighting back. Some of them are running for office. Some of them are helping people in office. Some of them are engaging through nonprofit and other organizations. And I think that's great. The more exposure on what they're trying to do behind closed doors in Harrisburg, the better, because it's going to mean more power staying with the people.
I'm really happy to hear that the engagement has been pretty good across the state, and that you believe that there might be they may be backing off that position because they don't have the votes to get that done.
That's my perspective right now. I mean, I'm seeing a significant amount of engagement. For example, the business community has spoken out against this. And that has caused a number of members in Harrisburg, primarily Republican members, to say, you know what, I'm not sure I want to cross these big employers in my district, and I'm not going to go forward with that. In addition to that, I just think more exposure on these things makes these members in the legislature go, I'm not sure that that's really what I should be doing here, because I'm going to get grief from my newspaper, I'm going to get grief from my local business, grief from my local civic association. And so I think programs like this, exposing what they're trying to do, has a real positive impact on stopping these bad things from happening as well.
So I want to switch up a little bit. I want to talk about the gun violence. You know, we just had DA Larry Krasner on, and we talk to him frequently because we are concerned, and frankly, beyond being concerned, Josh, we're scared for our children who have to be in these streets. I know that you were involved recently in negotiations about ghost guns, and so could you tell us about that?
Yeah. Look, I take this gun violence epidemic very seriously, and it's all hands on deck in my office to combat it. Now, look, we're not the local police. I remind people there are 6,000 local Philadelphia police officers. We've got a few dozen agents in Philadelphia. So we're not the local police, we're not the local district attorney, but we do our part. And we focus a lot on gun trafficking. We focus a lot on, shutting down these big corrupt organizations who are bringing drugs and guns into our communities. And one of the things we have seen proliferating at an extraordinary rate are these so-called ghost guns. And let me just take a second and explain what a ghost gun is, because I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about what they are. A ghost gun is basically, it's also referred to as like an 80% receiver. These are guns that come in two parts or so. They can be snapped together, a few screws get drilled in, and then you have a working handgun, right? That's a ghost gun. And so your question might be, well, why would I go through the trouble, and it's not a huge amount of trouble, why would I go through the trouble of buying a gun in two parts when I can just buy a regular gun? And the reason is because when you buy a ghost gun in Pennsylvania, because it's in these two parts, it's not considered a gun. And when it's not considered a gun, you don't have to go through a background check to buy it. In addition to that, there's no serial number on these ghost guns, and so they're untrackable and untraceable for law enforcement. And so we began more than 2 years ago sending undercover agents to gun shows throughout Pennsylvania where people were literally buying these ghost guns by the duffel bag load. They were bringing them back to their row homes in Philly, assembling them, pretty easy to assemble. And then they were selling them on the streets for about a 100% profit. And obviously they were being used for criminal purposes. And so first thing I did was I used my authority as the Attorney General to say under state law, these should be regulated as firearms. And guess what happened, Joanne? I got sued by the gun lobby the next day.
So I'm almost certain.
Yep, got sued by the gun lobby. And then, by the way, we engaged with the ATF under Donald Trump and now under Joe Biden to get them to do it at the national level. And I'm pleased that Joe Biden just a couple of days ago announced that they were going to go forward with regulations to say that these should be considered firearms and not have a background check. But you see, we can't wait on all this legal stuff, because what's happening is this year, from one gun show promoter, we were on track to have 40,000 ghost guns make their way from these gun shows back into our communities, primarily in Philadelphia. I hope you heard that number. 40,000.
40,000.
That's a lot.
40,000. That's a lot of ghost guns.
I see that in the number of deaths that would arise as a result of 40,000 guns making its way to the streets of Philadelphia.
Exactly.
That is
By the way,
that's amazing.
It's amazing, right? So here's what we did. We said, you know what? We can be smart about this, and we don't have to wait on the courts, and we don't have to wait on Washington. We don't have to wait on Harrisburg. We went directly to the gun show promoter, and we showed him the evidence of how these ghost guns that were being purchased at his gun shows were ending up on the streets of Philadelphia and used in crime. And you know what he did? And this is a big Second Amendment guy. He joined with us and recognized that we can protect liberty and we can protect public safety. And he stopped selling these ghost guns at his shows, which is going to stop those 40,000 from making their way onto our streets. That's a serious thing that's going to save lives in Philadelphia. It's going to stop the flow of these ghost guns into our communities. And now it gives us that sort of breathing point, if you will, to work with the Biden administration, work with others, to adopt regulations to simply say that these ghost guns should be subject to background checks. And here's the thing. How many times have we heard this debate, right, between the NRA and the gun violence prevention groups, and they all say different things, except the one thing they say the same is, well, we all agree we should keep guns out of the hands of criminals. Well, this is one way to do that. Force everybody to go through a background check if they want to buy a ghost gun. These are the weapons of choice for criminals.
I want you to hold there, Josh. Josh, we got to go to a quick commercial. We'll be right back. You're listening to Black Women's Leadership Council on WURD Radio, 96.1 FM, 900 AM, streaming live on WURDradio.com. We'll be right back.
Every day brings an opportunity to connect to your community and one another. With AARP, you can connect without ever leaving home. Just click, and you're at a movie watch party with other fans, chatting in an online book club, or drinking a cup of joe with fellow family caregivers. Connections like these remind us that community is more than just where we live. With virtual offerings available here in Philadelphia, you can click to connect at aarp.org/near-you.
Stage Door, focusing on arts and culture in and around Philadelphia. Hosted by Tiffany Bacon and co-moderated by Jeffrey Page of the Philadelphia Theater Company. Part of The Source, Fridays at noon, exclusively on WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. Streaming live on WURDradio.com, the WURD Radio app, or watch live on WURD TV via Facebook and YouTube. Sponsored by New Voices sponsor Comcast, NBC Universal, and Pico.
You're listening to The Source with Black Women's Leadership Council on WURD Radio.
Streaming live on WURDradio.com and the WURD Radio app.
Here I stand looking around me, while all around me, what do I see? Unhappy faces behind a painted smile.
So we're coming back, Josh. Our lines we're trying to light up for you, but we don't have that much time left in the in this next segment. We wanted to ask a few more questions, but what we want to do is get you committed to come back on here so that our listeners can actually interface with you.
Of course.
And
I love coming on your show. I'm happy to come back.
Yes, and we love having you because we want people to hear what you're doing. And I know that one of the things that was said through I can't see my Facebook messages because I'm having a little problem with my technology today. But did you work with any other legislators in this ghost gun piece that you did? Are you working collaboratively with people across the state and in Philadelphia?
We are. And I have to tip my hat to Representative Almond Brown. He's a new state rep. I think he's only been in office a few months. And, man, he really worked his tail off working with us and the gun show promoter to bring this deal together. I really commend him. And, in fact, I stood up with him in his West Philly district along with Senators Williams and Hughes, two fine leaders on this and many other issues. And the three of us stood together to make this announcement. I'm really grateful to Representative Brown in particular for his leadership.
We are proud of him as well as one of our newest state reps, and really sort of giving the younger generation of leadership. He was someone that Emma Chappelle really worked hard in getting elected, she thought very highly of him, very highly of him. And
well, we miss Emma, and anyone Emma thinks highly of, I think highly of. She was an extraordinary woman.
We're going to keep her memory, and we're going to keep the things that she wanted to do going, and you're going to hear a lot more about some of our next initiatives, and we're going to do it in her name because she was very, very committed. Wanted the change a little bit. So, Josh, in the role that you have as the Attorney General, you also, your office is broad and it has a lot of different things that it does. We are also concerned about these acquisitions and mergers in healthcare, where people who, and I say it because, I'm a consumer of a lot of healthcare getting older, and we don't like when we find out that when we have a doctor and a new system comes in and it's out of network. And so I think I sent you something on that before, but I really want to talk about that a little bit, about the role your office is playing, because somebody needs to police the healthcare agencies that are getting into these mergers, because I think some of these healthcare companies are getting greedy. So let me put it that way.
Yes, you think? Look, when healthcare institutions, nonprofit healthcare institutions, want to merge in Pennsylvania, they have to receive our approval. And at times they also have to receive the FTC's approval, the Federal Trade Commission. And so, for example, we had Jefferson and Einstein wanted to merge. And you may recall that I opposed that merger when they initially proposed it. We went to court over it. And that's because when I was assessing the original proposal from Jefferson and Einstein, I felt that the good people of North Philadelphia were potentially going to lose out. I didn't feel that the commitment by Jefferson to invest in North Philly was real, and I was concerned that once those institutions merged, that they would have taken healthcare out of their North Philly operation and shifted it to their Montgomery County operation. And look, I'm a Montgomery County guy. It's where I live, and of course I want to have top-notch, top-flight healthcare in Montgomery County, but it should never be at the expense of other communities, especially disadvantaged, minority, low-income communities. And so I pushed back, and I took these guys to court, and we went back and forth, and ultimately we were able to reach an agreement that mandates Jefferson spend more than $200 million in North Philadelphia alone.
Wow.
And that they can't take these needed services out of their hospital in North Philly and shift them to Montgomery County. And so we were able to get an agreement that is binding, by the way, right, that North Philly is protected. And so then we dropped our objection to that merger. So when I look at these mergers across Pennsylvania, I look at it that way, right? How do we protect the patients? How do we make sure that they still have access? How do we make sure that costs don't go up? How do we make sure that we're not creating situations where people can't get access to their health care, where it might have been a walk away or a short bus ride away, but now it's not available to them? And so that's what we look for when we consider these mergers and whether or not to support them.
And sometimes what these institutions do is that they're not only a healthcare institution, but they become their own insurer, and then they want to block other people who are trying to use the services by telling them that they're out of network, and I think that isn't good. I have a beloved doctor that I love, and I want to always have that doctor, and I don't want to pay higher costs because he somehow, if a merger occurs, is out of network.
Right, exactly. And look, there's a lot of those games that get played, but here's what I want your listeners to know. I'm their attorney, and I will not approve a deal that undermines their access to quality health care in Pennsylvania. That was true when I stood up in Western Pennsylvania to the two largest healthcare companies there, UPMC and Highmark, who were about to leave 1.9 million Pennsylvanians without health care. I stood up to them, negotiated a deal, and now we preserve their care. It was true when we were battling Jefferson and Einstein, and it will be true going forward. I will not let these big institutions, if I could say this on your air, screw over patients. And
I love it.
If that's okay.
As I said, that one of the things that the pandemic has shown, Josh, is that the disparity in healthcare and the disparity in the access to healthcare.
Yeah.
So more people of color died of COVID or became sick and severely sick as a result of it, and which was long and systemic problems with not having access to healthcare. So they had more comorbidities that made them susceptible to COVID. So we really do have to drill down on that.
Yes.
I think that's right. Look, we have seen COVID has laid bare many of the inequities that we were already aware of, but weren't sort of on the front burner, if you will, right? The access to healthcare is a great example. In the early days of COVID, remember, who was being forced to go to work as quote-unquote essential workers while others could stay home? Oftentimes it was our black and brown communities so that others could stay home. And by the way, they were sent to work without proper PPE, without proper masks, gloves, and cleansers. And then, fast forward a few months later, who was getting access to testing and who wasn't? And then fast forward again to a year later, who was getting those vaccines right away and who had to wait longer in line? These are issues that are systemic. And, you know, we're kidding ourselves to think that that type of discrimination, that type of racism, that type of division, that type of inequity doesn't exist in our systems. It's true in our criminal justice system, in our education system, in our systems of commerce and healthcare. And I just think we have to be very honest about that. And I think leaders, myself included, have a responsibility to not just call it out, but to make clear, how are we going to change that culture? How are we going to make things different? How are we going to create more equality? Not going to happen overnight, but we all have to do our part to move things along in a positive and progressive way.
So, Josh, we're going to have to leave it there because we're getting ready to sign off. But I want you to think about one last question. How can your office stop these phone calls that says extended warranty? We got to please.
Here's the deal. They're scams, and I'm going to give you the same right that I give my mother-in-law when she gets one of those calls. First off, I would tell you don't answer. But if you do answer, say, can you hold on a minute? I just want to get my son-in-law on the phone. He's the attorney general. And then hang up that phone very, very quickly. So you're welcome to use that as well.
Well, we're going to, and we'll call you back and let you know if it worked. Thank you for coming on. Appreciate it. And we see you real soon. Thank you, Josh.
You too. Stay well.
Thank you.
All right.
Well, Rita, that's one show in the can, right?
I know. I can't believe we're at the end. It just went by so fast, but that's because of the mayor's press conference.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we have a pretty good show with the culturally competent care providers next week.
Yes, we can't wait for that.
Yes, we can't wait for that. And so we want to thank our listeners. I know a lot of people tried to get on the line today, and I'm sorry. And I couldn't read the Facebook stuff because I couldn't get up. So we will see you next week, and thank you for listening. And Jordan, you can take us out.
See you next week.
But there's blood on my hands.